before he became one of the greatest writers in human history. Charles Dickens was a forgotten child, a boy surrounded by poverty, the fear, and humiliation. The world remembers him as a literary genius, but very few know the darkness he lived through. At only 12 years old, he worked inside a dirty factory, while his father sat inside a prison cell. Victorian London was not the glamorous city people imagine today. It was a city of smoke, crime, child labor, and suffering. And in those dark streets, a young Dickens silently observed everything. The pain of poor families, the cruelty of the rich, the loneliness of abandoned children, those painful memories would later become legendary stories. Stories that shocked society itself, but behind the fame, behind the success, Charles Dickens carried emotional scars for the rest of his life. This is not just the story of a writer, this is the story of survival. The tragic, powerful, and unforgettable life of Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was born in 1812 in Portsmouth, England. At first, life seemed peaceful. His father, John Dickens, worked as a clerk. The family was not rich, but they survived. Young Charles loved stories from the beginning. Books fascinated him. He escaped reality through imagination. But beneath the surface, danger was already growing. His father struggled with money. Debt slowly consumed the family. And in Victorian England, debt was terrifying. People who could not repay money were often sent to prison. There was little mercy, no protection, no second chance. As the debts increased, the Dickens family fell apart financially. Fear entered the household, bills piled up, stress consumed the adults around him. And then the worst happened. John Dickens was arrested and sent to debtor's prison. For young Charles, it was devastating. The shame, the fear, the humiliation would stay inside him forever. 20 o'clock. At just 12 years old, Charles was forced to leave school. His education ended suddenly. Instead of books, he entered a factory, a blacking warehouse near the River Thames. The conditions were terrible. Long hours, cold rooms, dirty air, day after day, or he pasted labels onto bottles, surrounded by exhaustion, and hopelessness. For Dickens, this experience felt like abandonment. He believed the world had forgotten him, other children mocked him, adults ignored him, and deep inside, he carried overwhelming shame. Years later, he confessed that he never fully recovered emotionally from this period. But unknowingly, the factory was shaping his future, because there he witnessed the true reality of Victorian society. The suffering of children, the cruelty of poverty, the injustice of class divisions. These memories would later inspire characters like Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, and Pip. Pain became inspiration, darkness became creativity. Eventually, Charles returned to education for a short time, but life remained difficult. As he grew older, he became fascinated by language and storytelling. London itself became his greatest inspiration.
The crowded streets, the poor neighborhoods, the criminals, the forgotten people.
He observed everything carefully. Soon, he found work as a journalist. This changed his life forever. As a reporter, he traveled across London. He saw corruption inside politics. He witnessed the suffering of ordinary workers. And slowly, he began writing fictional stories inspired by real life. Readers immediately noticed his talent. His writing felt emotional, human, and painfully realistic. For the first time, Charles Dickens was no longer invisible. The poor child from the factory was becoming a respected writer. Then came success. Massive success. Charles Dickens became one of the most famous authors in England. His stories connected deeply with readers because they felt real. One of his most powerful novels was Oliver Twist, a heartbreaking story about an orphan child surviving cruelty and poverty. The novel shocked society. People could no longer ignore the suffering of poor children. Then came A Christmas Carol. The story transformed Christmas culture forever. Suddenly, Dickens became more than a writer. He became a social voice, a symbol of compassion. His books spread across the world. Crowds gathered to hear him speak. Readers cried during his public readings. He had become a global literary legend. But fame could not erase his inner pain. The scars of childhood remained hidden beneath the success. Behind the fame, Dickens struggled emotionally. His personal relationships became complicated. The pressure of success consumed him. He worked constantly, wrote endlessly, traveled nonstop, performed exhausting public readings. People admired him, but very few understood how tired he truly was. His health slowly declined. Stress damaged both his body and mind, yet he refused to stop. Writing had become part of his survival, but eventually his body could no longer continue. In 1870, while working on another novel, Charles Dickens collapsed soon after he died. The world mourned. One of history's greatest storytellers was gone. But even after death, Charles Dickens never disappeared. His stories still live today, his characters still inspire millions, and his message remains timeless. Never ignore the suffering of ordinary people, from a poor factory child to one of the greatest writers in history. His life proved something extraordinary. Sometimes the darkest childhoods create the brightest legends.